You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Locked On Mets is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. On the show today, a Mets win to discuss in the first segment. Got to give Francisco Lindor some love for putting on that MVP cape again and leading the Mets to a victory. Second segment, going to talk about how elite the Mets bullpen has been. Huascar Brazabon, Reed, Garrett, and Edwin Diaz continue to dominate, so we'll go through that a little bit. Then in the final segment, I'm going to talk about what David Stearns said prior to the game as he addressed the media. Before we get to any of that, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season, no matter where I am. Because right now, for those of you watching on YouTube, you don't see a video rolling because I am audio only. I'm outside the hotel on a little weekend vacation here, recording in the car. And something about these shows, man, it's nostalgia for me because I know how many of these I've done over the years where I'm on a trip and I just sneak away to whether right now it's my car or a rental car and just break down whatever's going on, my sister's car when I'm visiting them. Something about the car recordings just brings me that little sense of nostalgia. Feel good shows for me. So let's dive right into it. Francisco Lindor is unbelievable. And I think the crazy thing about this game for me is he had a game similar to this a year ago to the day, May 30th, 2024, the day after the fabled players-only meeting when Lindor locked the doors to the clubhouse after that brutal loss to the Dodgers where Jorge Lopez launched his glove into the stands. We all know the story. But the thing about Lindor that I always have to bring it up because it was so remarkable to me to just see what he would do in a 24-hour span. I'm pretty sure it was a day game after a night game, if I'm not mistaken. So pretty much like a 12-hour span. He does the meeting, he addresses the media, answers every question perfectly, pitch perfect, like how they train you in media sessions on how to handle New York media. That's how he handled that situation. Goes out the next day, goes for four for four, and more importantly, when you dive into the game, and I went right back through it because I wanted to remember all the details, leads off the game with a base hit. Steals second base, gets stranded. Then the Mets lineup does nothing until he comes back up in the third inning, and at that point they're trailing 2-0. Lindor hits a solo homer. Now it's 2-1. Then Starlin Marte would single, JD Martinez would walk in 2 outs, but that was pretty much it. And the Mets largely did nothing offensively again until he came up in the 5th inning. Leadoff single, behind him, strikeout, then a double play, out of the inning. Finally in the 7th inning, Pete Alonso, who got drilled in the hand or the wrist the night before, comes off the bench as a pinch hitter, doubles. Francisco Lindor comes up with 2 outs, gets a base hit to drive in Alonso. So at that point, he has driven in both runs of the game, ties it up, and then he finally gets help in the bottom of the 8th inning when JD Martinez hits a game-winning homer. 4 for 4 day for Francisco Lindor, always playing his great defense at shortstop, putting the cape on, leading the Mets to a victory, and then, of course, we know what happened from there as the Mets went on their magical run from June on. Now you talk about tonight's game. And once again, year later to the day, it's Francisco Lindor largely carrying his team to win. Not the same circumstances, not a team that is spiraling the way that one was, but a team that is pressing offensively, and Francisco Lindor leads off the game with a homer. Top of the 3rd inning, David Peterson is in a real jam, first one he got into in the game. Bases loaded, 2 outs, a scorching line drive hit Francisco Lindor's way, 107 miles per hour, times his leap perfectly, makes a great catch to help Peterson get out of that inning. Probably saved a couple of runs at least. Second at bat, Lindor comes up, 1 out, 3rd inning, base hit. After Mark Vientos strikes out, Juan Soto comes through with 2 outs, hits an RBI double to score Lindor. Starling Marte helped out, kind of similar to J.D. Martinez last year. Hit a solo homer in the 4th inning, and then Lindor tacked on a final insurance run in the 8th, hitting another home run, this one from the other side of the plate, lefty on the mound to start things off. So the first homer came batting right-handed, second one came batting left-handed, both of them out to left field. So just an awesome game by Francisco Lindor, great defense, and really good to see him break out a little bit offensively. He has been in a slump over the last couple weeks. Goes 3 for 4, a couple home runs. Hopefully that gets him on the right track. I talked about on yesterday's show, the Mets lineup has to step up in this series. This wasn't necessarily the game that I was hoping for. I wanted to see more fireworks, but you know what? They got the win, and Juan Soto came through with a huge 2-out hit, and Francisco Lindor hit a couple home runs. Those are the guys that you really want to see get going, and Pete Alonso doubled as well. So, to me, if those 3 guys start hitting, and that's all that comes out of this series, that's amazing, and hopefully they can carry that momentum moving forward. But a good game overall by the New York Mets. I want to talk about the pitching side of things here, because David Peterson had a solid start, and we can even just get to that right now. Peterson goes 5 2/3, allowed 5 hits, 1 walk, struck out 5. I thought he was good, not great. Definitely was a complete command of the game for 4 of the 6 innings that he was on the mound for. The 3rd inning started to get away from him, but he was able to make some pitches, and then he was fortunate that Lindor made that leaping catch. And then in the 6th inning, he gets the first 2 outs easily. So I thought for sure, Peterson's going to cruise through 6. Maybe he's even going to try to steal an out or 2 in the 7th inning. Who knows? And then all of a sudden, he hits a batter, kind of loses it, gives up a base hit, gives up a double to give up the first run of the game for the Rockies. Then he's pulled. And that's when it was turned over to the Mets bullpen. A bullpen that, while they've gotten a lot of credit this year, I still don't think that we truly appreciate how good this bullpen has been. And even myself, I did a trade deadline show this week for the fun of it after the off day, where I just was looking at what the Mets need at the deadline. The thing that I said they needed the most, or the most obvious need that this roster might have, was getting another late inning reliever. But let's not forget that right now they have 3 very elite relievers in their bullpen, and those are the guys that held down this game. Sure, it wasn't against the best lineup in the world with the Rockies, but Huascar Brazabon got a big out for David Peterson in that 6th inning. He stayed on in the 7th. He gave up a solo homer, but still got 4 outs. Reed, Garrett, Edwin Diaz were dominant after that. I want to talk about that trio in just a minute here. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. It's not just your NBA action. You can look at MLB action each day as well. If you believe Juan Soto is going to homer this weekend, look at a home run prop combined with the Mets winning the game on a same-game parlay, and you can win big. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. Now, the Mets bullpen this year has been really good, and there's 3 guys right now who have video game numbers. Huascar Brazabon, Reed Garrett, and Edwin Diaz. Brazabon has a 1.34 ERA, and he just gave up a run, solo homer, in that 7th inning. Like I mentioned in the last segment, he got a big out in the 6th, straining a couple runners for David Peterson, both of them, of course, in scoring position, so a huge out there. Comes on for the 7th, does get the solo homer, but still gets 3 more outs. He's been amazing. You have Garrett comes on in the 8th inning, gets a pop-up, then 2 strikeouts. His ERA is now 0.73. Had 2 appearances this year where he gave up 1 run, and other than that, he's been spotless. So if you talk about, the Mets need a late inning guy, they have a very elite one right now in Garrett. I mean, he has done incredibly well, particularly as stranding runners at times too. He's been amazing. And so the Mets do have a really great 8th inning guy or Swiss Army knife, however you want to utilize him, honestly. He has been so effective this year. Do I still think there's a world where the Mets should look to add another arm at the deadline? Of course. But right now, Garrett has been so good, and as has Brazabon, to really give you a couple of different guys that can bridge the gap to Edwin Diaz. And Edwin Diaz is just back to prime Diaz form right now. Struck out the side, and he has 7 strikeouts in the last 10 batters that he's faced. Continues to just blow people away all of a sudden, and he's now retired 30 consecutive batters, the longest stretch in Major League Baseball, the longest active stretch right now. That's 10 perfect innings. And I know it hasn't been exactly that because there was definitely a 4-out save mixed in there, but what he has done is just wild how effective he has been, because there was a point this season where there are some questions. Now there is no question. Edwin Diaz right now is looking like 2022 Edwin Diaz. That is how good he is. We'll see if he can sustain it, but if Diaz keeps pitching like this, if Garrett continues what he's doing, if Huascar Brazabon can somehow maintain this, and I don't know if you can maintain a 1.34 ERA, but maintain being largely effective every time he takes the ball, yes, you still, of course, could always use more, but that already is the foundation of a great bullpen, and I think it's a bullpen that's been discounted a lot this year. So definitely wanted to give them a little bit of flowers here to talk about why the Mets won this game. They don't win it without that bullpen that has been invaluable all year long. They just continue to step up. Now, when it comes to stepping up, I do want to spend a little bit of time in this segment ripping into Mark Vientos. And I hate to do it. But what an ugly night of at-bats. I should have mentioned this in the last segment. 0 for 3 strikeouts. And Brett Baty gets an at-bat late because the Mets are obviously going to make a sub for defense anyway. Right-hander on the mound, so see what Brett Baty can do in that spot. Following up Lindor when he hit his home run. And Brett Baty, the first pitch he sees, 100 miles per hour, rips it into right field, all over it. Line drive over 108 miles per hour off the bat. Just awesome. Awesome liner as Brett Baty continues to absolutely rake. But Vientos, what's going on here? I mean, it is baffling what has happened with Mark Vientos, because this guy was so good last year. And we'll talk about it a little bit in the next segment. I mean, David Stearns all but says in his media availability that if Mark Vientos had an option, I think Ronnie Mauricio would be in his place right now, which is crazy to say, but it's just wild because the equity that he built up last year, it's fading fast, and I think that's part of why he's struggling. But man, someone's got to get through these guys. There's no rule that Brett Baty and Mark Vientos can't be awesome at the same time. And it feels like that's the case with these guys. You throw Francisco Alvarez in the bunch as well. It's like only one of them can be hitting at a time. And the other two just have to watch. But there was points in their minor league careers where they were all hitting at the same level. So they need to get back to that foundation. It's so rare that a couple guys you came up with are all on the big league roster at the same time. And all playing a consistent amount. So this is a real opportunity for these three guys to grab on to their places, their roster spots, and their playing time, and hold it tight. But Mark Vientos has just been lost, and I don't quite get it. We'll get into it more when we talk about what David Stearns said, but I think it just comes down to pressing. Feeling the pressure, trying to do too much, and it's not working for him. So hopefully Mark Vientos can figure things out. This is supposed to be a weekend where he'll get some good, matchups for him that he can potentially exploit. But I thought he had a good matchup against Kyle Freeland. And he's just striking out every time. He's waving at pitches out of the zone. He's looking at pitches in the zone. He just doesn't have any feel. And I don't think it's a swing change that needs to happen. I think it's all between the ears with Mark Vientos. I really do. And I'm not saying it to begrudge the guy, because you know he works as hard as he can. You know he's doing everything he's supposed to do. But the guy just can't hit right now. And it's a very unfortunate thing, especially if you have so much real estate built up on Vientos Island like I have. Luckily, I'd never sold all of my shares in Beatty Island, so we're doing pretty good with our multiple timeshares in different spots here. But I just want to see both of these guys good at once at some point. Is that too much to ask for both Vientos and Beatty to hit at the same time? Because, man, what a lineup it would be if those two guys could just figure it out at the same time together. But I digress on that. What I want to do to close out the show is give you a little bit of insight into what David Stearns said before the game. So we'll talk about all of that in just a minute. If you're an everydayer that's always tuning into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. It's our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime, take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways. You get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. You go to subtext.com/Locked On Mets. Now, David Stearns met with the media before the game on Friday, answered questions for about 20 minutes. I would say 10 minutes of that was talking about Juan Soto. And there's really nothing to be learned. I mean, he did give a little bit more of a well-rounded answer to Soto's struggles, talking about how it's natural for a player on a big contract to press a little bit once he gets the deal. And he thinks that Soto is pressing and putting a lot of pressure on himself. But when you ask questions of why, how, all these different things about Soto and his struggles, there really is no good answer. There's no good answer to why. You can assume that it's the contract. You can assume that it's the pressure. If you want to be a crazy Yankee fan, and you could say, oh, it's because he's missing Aaron Judge so much. But the reality is nobody knows what's going on. No one has a clear picture of why Soto's struggling, including Soto. He doesn't get it. And so I just think when you have an issue or a problem that's completely out of your control, it's not worth wasting your effort trying to figure it out. Like, I can't tell you why Juan Soto is struggling. I can tell you he's hitting the ball on the ground a lot. I can tell you he's rolling over the ball all the time. I can tell you it doesn't look right. But I can't tell you, it's specifically this pitch and these counts that he's just not able to handle. And David Stearns, who has all the information in the world at his disposal, is saying the exact same thing to the media. That, I don't know. I mean, it was a little more eloquent than that. He certainly spoke from, the mind of a Harvard-educated scholar as opposed to me and my car, graduate of FAU. But David Stearns, while he handled the media and answered every question, he also didn't give any answers other than he thinks that Juan Soto's pressing, and putting a lot of pressure on himself. But he said the guy works hard. He's doing everything he can to help us win. He's trying to impact the game in other ways. He said all the things, but the end of the day, it's out of everybody's control except for Juan Soto's. Everybody's control. So as a fan, if you're getting pissed off and frustrated at Juan Soto, yeah, I get it. But that energy is not going to help you at all, and it's certainly not going to change anything. But what you have to do, and I think what David Stearns is trying to illustrate or trying to convey, is that the guy is so good that they're just, while it's frustrating, and I wouldn't say they're frustrated with him, I think they're frustrated for him, where they know he wants to perform, he wants to be the guy. But I don't think there's a sliver of doubt in anyone's mind in that front office that at some point this guy's going to hit. So unfortunately, you have to continue to preach patience. And it's interesting because you get his answers to that question about Soto. You get his answer about runners in scoring position, and a little nuance there. But ultimately, again, it's one of those situations where, the guys are aware of it. but that might not be a good thing, but you can't not address it. So you're caught in the middle of, you want them to know how much the team is struggling. You want to try to give them some different approaches, some different things to think about which account to attack when you're in those situations with runners in scoring position. Maybe you should be a little more aggressive early in counts, whatever it is for your specific hitter, and you can provide resources. But at the end of the day, it's up to those guys to get the job done. And it's just sort of that mental thing. Now, when it comes to Francisco Alvarez, the difference when he's asked these questions about Soto, about runners in scoring position, and then a question about Alvarez, well, now there's a tangible thing that he can pinpoint. And he does. He said, Francisco Alvarez is a player that went through a major swing change in the offseason, lost all of or most of his spring training, and now is still early on to the season, still trying to be comfortable in the box and be comfortable with his new stance. And he said he's probably fighting himself a little bit right now. But to me, that just shows you the difference in the player or the problem. Runners in scoring position is a frustrating problem because it's nearly impossible to solve. Same thing with Juan Soto. I don't think there's a hitting coach that's going to snap their fingers and make the guy hit. I mean, he's his own hitting coach. Juan Soto, at some point, will lock in and be just fine. So I really think that compare that to the Alvarez situation, talking about the swing change and everything else, that's a tangible thing that David Stearns can pinpoint and can let the media in on. But again, there wasn't a lot to grasp from most of the things that David Stearns said, just because a lot of it is stuff that is kind of out of his control. But regardless, one thing that is in his control is when Ronnie Mauricio comes up, and there's a lot of interesting questions on that. He said that they weren't going to put any specific boxes for Mauricio to check along the way. There's no, you have to play X amount of games, get to X amount of at-bats. It's just more of a feel thing, making sure what they're looking at is a very healthy player who is competing at the highest level and isn't worried about re-injury, just a guy that is playing free and easy and back to being Ronnie Mauricio. When asked about if there's things he can develop, he talked about that there's still some growth when it comes to plate discipline. At the same time, he also said that you don't want to take away from what makes Ronnie Mauricio special, and that's hitting the ball incredibly hard. So they're going to keep encouraging him to do exactly that, and everything else should fall into line at some point when he is both ready himself and when the team actually has a role for him. And I think that was another thing that I've been talking about on the show, but it was good to hear David Stearns offer his perspective. He said, sure, if Ronnie Mauricio was 100% healthy and had 200 plate appearances under his belt this year, it'd be a lot harder to look at this recent performance and keep him in AAA. But there is still different things that he can work on in AAA that can still make him a better big leaguer long term. But also, he mentioned that you have guys struggling that don't have options, and that's where I think he was talking about Mark Vientos. If Vientos had an option, maybe it's a different story, but he doesn't have an option. Brett Beatty has an option, but Brett Beatty is playing great. Luis Angel Acuna has an option, but he brings you so much defense and versatility. I think that would be the move to make at some point if they wanted to get Ronnie Mauricio up, is just to flip him for Acuna, but I don't think that's going to happen, anytime in the next couple weeks. I think they really do want to give Mauricio time to get his legs under him. Other couple injury notes. Jose Siri is in a running progression volume buildup, and he's nowhere close according to David Stearns. So we'll see when we get more updates on it, but he's running. That's all we know. Doesn't seem like he's running full tilt just yet. Frankie Montas, the timeline for return is still middle of June. He would not commit to a timeline on Sean Manaea. When it came to a 6-man rotation, it does seem like the Mets are planning to toggle between a 5- and a 6-man rotation. So when they don't have any days off, they'll lean into the 6-man rotation, pulling probably a Blackburn or a McGill out of the bullpen and plugging them back in the rotation, whichever one of those guys ends up taking a bullpen spot, assuming that the Mets don't just demote McGill. Those are their options that they have there, and we've been talking about that a lot on this show, so nothing new there. Just David Stearns pretty much making it clear that the Mets are not planning to commit to a 6-man rotation for the rest of the season, or maybe even any point this season. They're going to be a little bit creative with their pitching. I'm sure guys are going to be thrown out of the bullpen, and they're going to figure it out. They're going to find a way that they can maximize their starting pitching depth, and who knows? You still don't know if Frankie Montas and or Sean Manaea are even going to look good So there's still a lot to be determined right now. But they are definitely going to bring up Blackburn to make a start in that series against the Dodgers. Anyway, that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. Back in the car. Gotta love it. I'll be back in the car again tomorrow night. Still have one more day left of my trip, so I'll be breaking down whatever happens on late Saturday afternoon. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on social media, Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show, Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day, not for your second watch. Head over to YouTube and check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. We're talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.